All right, welcome everyone. Chris, the stage is yours. Enjoy.
Well, thank you, Mike, for having me, and thank you all for attending this like a 30-minute buzz session on what we're going to call it coaching about AAC. This is all about coaching and how to help communication partners. I know that with conversations with Mike in the past that there's been previous webinars, and I don't know if you've been to them or not, but I believe they're all posted for you to enjoy and consume in your own time. With is it Catherine Helland? Was that right, Mike? Is that the
That
give
is
me a thumbs
correct.
up?
Yes, from Temple. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go over the basics of AAC and those sorts of things. This is going to be specific to coaching. I'm also vamping here for a second because Mike put the URL to the slides. You can also, do you scan the QR code with your device, so you can have a two-screen experience. Just real quick, who I am. My name is Chris Bugaj. I work up in Northern Virginia. I'm in my closet right now, but I'm in Northern Virginia. I work for Loudoun County Public Schools. I'm the assistive technology specialist there. If anyone's ever heard me talk before, I'm not a big fan of that term, assistive technology specialist. It's just that's where my pay scale lies. There's a bunch of specialists, and that's what I get. It's my job title. But I like to think of myself as an inclusive design coach, someone who helps other educators design instruction in a way that is inclusive for everybody. So now that you have the URL, let's dive into this coaching and AAC in general. So I think the next bunch of slides are more about me and disclosure statements. Um, One thing you should know about me is that I do a podcast that comes out every week. In fact, right after this, I'm going to be recording with Rachel Madel. We're going to record our weekly podcast called Talking with Tech, where it is, again, free stuff, all about AAC. And once a week, we put out an episode, and it's usually some sort of interview that we've done, like maybe 15, 20 minutes of Rachel and I bantering about something that's going on in the world of AAC. And then we play some sort of interview with some sort of stakeholder who is living or working with AAC. So check that out. All right, coaching. When you're coaching and we're going to be very specific with our words here and very intentional what we mean by coaching. But when you're coaching, you got to have some sort of skills. That's what you're trying to coach. Meaning you're trying to learn something, and that something is usually a skill that someone doesn't have, and you're trying to build that over time. So traditionally, when AAC has been implemented, we spend this copious amounts of time selecting the right thing, and then we put it in place, and there's not as much time spent on the intervention or the implementation. The implementation is often kind of left up to people's own devices. All right, teacher, well, you've got the thing, now go for it. Or, okay, speech therapist, you got the tool, implement it. And the people that often drop off the tools or make the selections for the tools, in some cases, it's two completely different people that are implementing and who've made the selection. But the intervention and the implementation is often focused around the student, rightly so, right? We want the student using the communication device. But really what we've come to find is that the way a student will use the communication device is for the communication partners to use the communication device. And using a communication device is a skill. Knowing how to use it effectively is a skill. So that's why we focus on this coaching aspect of getting people to embrace and understand how to use that skill. The skill of using a communication device is layered. There are lots of little skills embedded into that larger skill or that larger concept of successfully implementing a communication device. These are just a number of skills that you could be working on. So SMORES is one, Master Pal is another. These are two acronyms that help people wrap their minds around how to model on a communication device. There's the skill of least to most prompting. Do I tell a kid, here, push this button? Or do I wait and see if they push a communication button, push one of the cells on the button? Those are two different levels of prompt, and the idea of moving through a hierarchy of these prompts is it's another skill people have to learn. And I could go on, like I said, each one of these topics could be a 30-minute lunch and learn talking about each one of those. So I won't spend time on each of those. Just know that there are many layers, and these are all individual skills we might be teaching, or we might be hoping a communication partner eventually learns. And because look at that, that is a lot of stuff, and that's not all of it. That's just what I could fit on the slide with a reasonable font size, right? I mean, there's lots more skills than besides that. So there's lots to learn here right now when it comes to AAC, and it can feel like too much to learn. And sometimes one of the things we struggle with is even the mindset of the people that are meant to be the communication partner. I don't really need to use that thing because I know everything the student's trying to say. So we have the issue that there's too much to learn. We don't spend a lot of time on training, which is usually a drop off, and yay, you got 1 hour to try and learn how to implement this communication device. Good luck. Now, things have been changing where we are trying to do more time with the implementation, but still, that often looks like training, right? And our training efforts often look like a Jackson Pollock painting, like, I'm going to show up in here and I'll show up and I'll do a training today. And maybe I'll be back in a couple weeks and maybe I'll do another training. Or, hey, maybe you can come over to this lunch and learn for 30 minutes. And it's kind of just no organization to it. So I'm going to relate AAC coaching and training and the whole idea of how do I teach communication partners how to do this thing with this thing of AAC to riding a bike. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, tell me what do you need? What are some things you need to learn how to ride a bike? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. Balance. Jamie says balance. Okay. Mike says a bike. Yeah, it's hard to learn how to ride a bike without a bike. Maybe a helmet, sure. Some sort of coordination, gross motor skills, a model, all right. Training wheels, hand-eye coordination, a willingness to try, Julie, right? You have to have some sort of belief that you can ride a bike, right? I like whoever said model too. That's another thing is like, I need to have seen someone else ride a bike so I can go, ooh, I want to do that. That looks fun. Can I do that? Someone has to kind of show you that. And then there's patience, encouragement. I saw practice. Now, practice is kind of an interesting component because I think I could get on a bike and I could practice and practice and practice and never actually learn how to ride a bike because you need something more than just practice. It's sort of like basketball, right? I can have a basketball, I can go out there and I can shoot, but if I'm doing it all the sorts of different ways, I'm not necessarily getting better. I could actually be practicing the wrong way. My feet could be wrong. How I'm throwing the ball could be wrong. I need something beyond that. And Kristen writes, a teacher, right? Oh, look, Lori says a safe place to ride. Yes, I think we can boil all those skills down into all those things that you said into 4 main categories. So Mike said the bike and a helmet and those sorts of things fall in the tools category. Training to me is that model where you would be able to watch maybe a video of someone riding a bike or shooting a basket or whatever the skill is we want someone to learn. And then coaching is that teacher aspect that Kristen brings up. The idea that there's someone there behind you going, you got to pedal faster. Or maybe even better than that is, what do you think happened there when you fell off? I didn't pedal fast enough. Yeah, I think that's right. You didn't pedal fast enough. What did you think you did right? I was steering really well. And someone kind of asking these questions that parent or sibling or friend who's behind you holding the bike, encouraging you to do it and giving you feedback about how you're doing it. But coached around all of those is you need, and this came up here when you were putting your responses, the idea that you can ride a bike. And that really is where we have to start, is that not motivation to do it, but the idea that I can do it. Because if you start off going, well, I'll never ride a bike, I can never learn how to do that, it's impossible. Well, then chances are it's going to be a lot more difficult for you. So here's a little research that I think informs the idea of doing coaching as opposed to just training. Why this third piece of coaching is really important, and it's not just tools and training, despite the fact that maybe this is where we've lived for many, many years, specifically in AAC, but maybe even in other aspects of working with students, or working with even adults. So this is research that you can dig into here from Joyce and Showers, but it's boiled down in this nice simple graphic. If you go to a PD session, like one you're here right now, this half hour is like a PD session where you are sort of outside. It's not embedded into your job, what you're doing. You've left your job. You've come to a place, even if it's virtually, and I like to think of it as butt in chair. You've come and you put your butt in a chair someplace, and you've learned from somebody. Well, the impact on your knowledge, like if we did a test right after this, if Mike had some sort of formative assessment that he says, all right, now answer these questions, you'd probably get 10%. And the impact on the actual skill, like doing it, maybe 5%, and then actually going back and doing it in the classroom, 0%. Theory and modeling, look at that same thing. Impact in actual practice is 0%. And what I mean by that is theory and modeling is, again, if I just talked to you and I showed you a couple of videos, now I've modeled it for you. You've seen videos of what I'm talking about, what riding a bike looks like, but you still don't necessarily know how to ride a bike. And same thing with AAC. I could show you videos all day long of people using AAC. It doesn't matter. That won't necessarily translate for you being able to implement AAC as a communication partner. So then we got theory and modeling and practice. So come to my PD session. I'm going to give you the theory. I'm going to show you these videos. And oh, by the way, we're going to practice it in this structured setting of this training. And yes, you will be able to actually then implement that a little bit better. But when you went back to your classroom, it's still going to be a huge drop off, and only 5% will actually translate to the actual classroom. The sweet spot, the magic, is adding all 4 of these components together. So coming and learning the theory, watching a video or seeing someone do it, and then practicing it yourself in a nice structured setting, away from kids, away from a communication partner, away from an AAC user, and then actually practicing it with someone coaching you in that job embedded environment. So yeah, someone's going to go to my classroom, I'm going to work with a kid, and someone's going to coach me through that after the fact. That's where you see the huge carryover. So you need to be implementing some sort of coaching element. So what does that mean? This is really shocking. You found the scroll of truth, and the scroll of truth says training alone is not very effective. And that is a hard pill for people to swallow, because we do so much training where people go off and they sit their butt down in a chair and they listen to somebody, might participate in some activities, but still you need to have some sort of coaching element. And this could be a big takeaway for you when you're thinking about planning professional development next year, or in the future, heck, later this year. However you're thinking of professional development, what does my carryover look like after my PD to have some sort of coaching element in the classroom? So this is what we did for AAC in my neck of the woods. Knowing this phenomenon, we needed these 3 things. We did what we called the Learning Language with AAC initiative this year, where we got teachers iPads, and the iPads were loaded with a particular AAC app, and the teachers could request a different AAC app if they had users of that particular one. So we started with Lamp Words for Life. That was sort of the easiest way. We said the majority of users in our particular school district are using Lamp Words for Life. So let's put this on these devices that go to a teacher specifically, and the teacher is meant to use it as a modeling device. And then if they couldn't use Lamp Words for Life, or if they didn't have any students that were using Lamp Words for Life, they could swap out the app and put in Prolo Quo, Touch Chat, Snap Plus Core First. Whatever the tool is they needed, we could put it on there. It's just for IT purposes, it was easier. But and then the teachers also came out for days of training, full days of training, where we would go over the theory of, specifically, we looked at aided language stimulation using the s'mores model. And if those 2 things are like, what is he talking about? Go back and listen to Helen's stuff. I'm sure she talks about aided language stimulation. But it's the idea that we model, the communication partners model on the device. I'm using my hand as my communication device. We model on the device more than the student actually uses the device itself. Of course, the student is invited to use the device, and we tempt them to use the device. But the idea is that we have to use the device more. And how do we actually do that in the classroom? And then so it wasn't just the tools, and it wasn't just the training. When people left the training with that iPad, they also got 6 coaching sessions. And the way the coaching sessions worked was that the first week of the coaching session was to do some sort of observation. So a coach would come out, meet with a teacher, and observe them. In fact, actually record with an iPad them working with a student. And then we measured some of the aspects of modeling on that during that session. So we measured how many times they modeled on the device, and then we just actually tallied those up. The second session was meeting with the person that was being coached, reviewing that video footage together and kind of scoring it together and talking about it and having this kind of reflective moment. How'd you think that went? What do you think you would do after you went to the training? How do you feel like that went? That kind of stuff. Week 3 and week 4, and I put the word weeks. That was the original plan. It's actually, I should change it. It really should be sessions. Session 3 and session 4 were, okay, you've met with the kid, or you've been practicing this aided language stimulation. I'm going to be there with you. Maybe, do you need more modeling? Well, maybe I'll work with you, your student, and you watch me. Okay, now you jump in and you try it. Do you notice how every time I said a word, the kid said a word, I said that word back to him, and then I added one more word. Do you want to try that? Okay, you jump in and you try it. Okay, great. And we had this sort of back and forth for 2 sessions. And then the week 5, or session 5, was a repeat of session 1, where they we did another video recording, watching them model on the device. And then the week 6 was a repeat of week 2, where it's like, okay, well, let's watch that video again and let's score it again. And then we measured how much someone improved from week 1 to week 6 in how often they were modeling using the communication device. Quarter 1, so the beginning of the school year, we specifically did the coaching with all of our speech language pathologists. I'm in a school district that has like 94 schools, over 90 speech therapists. So we did, or close to 90 speech therapists. And so we did, quarter 1 was just focused on the speech therapist. Quarter 2 and quarter 3, and it was supposed to be quarter 4, but best laid plans. We're all about doing that, the coaching with the teachers, with preschool teachers and autism teachers. And so that was that. So we don't have data on how much the teachers progressed because, if you haven't heard, schools are closed and we're not able to get that data right now. But we did have data on the speech therapists and how much they went from modeling from week 1 to week 6. And what we saw in their speech therapists was an 18% growth. So essentially, you can picture a giant spreadsheet. We marked down how many times they were modeling during week 1, and then how many times they were modeling during week 5, and we tallied it up and we averaged it, and we saw there was a growth of about 18%, which is huge, right? I mean, we have a district that's a lot of the size we have to be able to see this growth because of coaching, because all of it, but because of coaching specifically, we were able to measure it, and that was just awesome. We're seeing this follow through. So what does the coaching look like? What do I mean specifically by coaching versus consulting? And again, very particular about these words. So coaching, in my mind, well, let me ask you. How about you put it there in the chat? What do you think the difference is between coaching and consulting? Coaching equals, consulting equals, how do you define it? Take a second and breathe. Coaching equals give and take. Okay, Tony, excellent. Beth says coaching equals a partnership. Bajul says coaching equals a wise criticism. Consulting is when you're the expert. Coaching equals support. Coaching helps with modeling. Coaching is I do, we do, you do. Consulting, directing, and not necessarily give and take. Consulting is more one way. Why do these terms have to mean different things? Well, good question. That's an excellent question. So I will say, keep putting your responses in there. I'll tell you what our take on this is that coaching is more reflective and consulting is more directive. So as a consultant, I might come in and tell you what to do. Please, consultant, I don't know. Okay, here's the answer. This is what you need. I have some sort of expertise that you don't. Do this. Coaching draws it out from the inside. So that's how we see the difference. So there's a lot of coaching going on. There's a lot of coaching going on when we're trying to get people to be intrinsically motivated. Okay, before maybe this whole social distancing before closing the schools, I like to think that the model of therapy just in general was way more direct. It was like therapists sit with a student and do direct therapy. And even talking to teachers was sometimes we'd consult, just tell them what to do, and sometimes we'd coach. So these are just sort of, I don't want to say these are these are numbers, these are like guesstimations, right? Yeah, I'm not saying I did some sort of survey and found out. This is just, wouldn't you agree that before closing, that we did a lot of direct therapy and minimal consulting and coaching? But now it looks more like a draw four from Uno, right? It's more equal. That now when we're working with parents and we're teaching parents how to do things in this distance learning model, that, hey, parents, here's what you should try and do. Or parents, tell me, how does it feel? What did you think that was going to look like? What do you think you could do better in that session? How do you think you could model more, and asking more reflective questions? And I kind of really like this model because the research shows that if you do more coaching, you do better in actual practice, right? So I would like for this model to stick around after after we go back, and to continue coaching in this model. Maybe we always have this sort of distance learning from now on because we can do this coaching this way. So another way I think of coaching is this idea of motivational interviewing. So imagine you're the person in charge of helping someone get over or deal with the fact that they are addicted to drugs. A consultant might say, okay, person addicted to drugs, I have the perfect solution for you. Don't do drugs. Right? I'm telling you, I'm an expert in this. I'm an expert in not doing drugs, and I'm telling you, don't do drugs. But how does that really work? I mean, people who do drugs know that they shouldn't do drugs. Usually it's the idea that they have to come up with some sort of internal motivation to not do that. So that's where the coaching comes in, is you start to ask questions in a very reflective way so that people come up with the answers on their own, so it's self-generated. And that's how I see the difference another difference between coaching and consulting. And so these are some of those reflective questions. What would you like to see happen that is different from what's currently happening? What barriers do you see that are preventing that from actually happening? And what have you tried to do to make that happen? What went well? When you planned this lesson, what went really well? What were you hoping would happen that didn't happen? Those are all sorts of reflective questions that you could ask. And there's even more, how did you feel like it went? What would you do differently now that you're reflecting on it? What do you think you'll remember most about doing that experience that you were just in? Those sorts of things pull out, those sorts of questions force people to think about it on their own and come up with their own response. And that sort of thing sticks with people more than some outside person telling them what to do. So with my last 5 minutes here, I need a volunteer. Okay? Who wants to be brave to come on with me? Say, I'll volunteer. I'll do it with you, Chris. First one in gets to play with me. All right, Jen. Jen said sure. Jen, can you come on mic for a second?
Now I'm on mic.
Yes, Jen. Okay, so Jen, I've got a
Yes.
problem and I need you to coach me through it, okay?
Okay.
So all you can do, Jen, is you can refer to those two previous slides. I'm going to bring those up, okay, for possible
I
questions.
actually have it on a second screen, so you don't have to bring them up.
Excellent,
unless
Jen.
you want other people to see it too.
No. Let's do that. You use that second screen. That's perfect. And so you can ask me those questions, or you could give me summary statements like what I heard you say, Chris, and kind of refine what I'm saying. And that's it, okay? You are not allowed to solve the problem for me. I have to solve it myself, okay?
All right.
You feel good, Jen? You feel like you know what you have to do?
I know what I have to do. I don't feel good, but I know what I have to do.
All right. Let's see if you feel good at the end. So, because we've only got like 4 minutes, so let's see what we can do. So, Jen, this has nothing to do with AAC. This is just my own personal life that I'm struggling with something. Do you mind if you coach me through this?
Sure. What's going on?
So I'm a little frustrated with my kids right now. I'm not finding that they're finding a lot of internal motivation to do anything. They're relying a lot on my wife and I to kind of steer them and tell them what to do. And it's I'm not that sort of person. I'm very internally motivated. I find lots of stuff for myself to do, so I'm struggling.
So, what do you think is contributing to your children not having that internal motivation?
Well, part of it, I think, is like this external environment of school, right? I mean, for ages, they've been going to school, and their teachers tell them what to do, and they're not really being self-motivated at school. They just know, oh, I go to school, teacher tells me what to do, I do it, and that's how I win at school. And now that their teachers are less telling them what to do and just giving them assignments, and they have to find their own motivation, um, they're not. It's a struggle for them to open the computer and actually do it.
Right. So, what are some of the things you've been trying to get them to be more self-directed?
Well, that is a really good question, Jen, because my wife and I have fallen back to our old ways, and maybe our parents' old ways of telling them what to do. All right, so here's what you're going to do. At 9 o'clock, you're going to open that computer, and you're going to sign into Miss So-and-so's classroom, and you're going to do that work.
And
But I don't
how,
like being that parent, you know?
sure, I hear that. And how has that gone for your students? I hear that it's not gone well for you. How has it gone for your children?
Well, they sort of push back a bit against it a little bit because they've been sleeping past 9, and they've not, they've been staying up later than maybe they should. And that makes us have to ride them even more, or it feels like we do anyway. So I'm not sure it's working for either of us.
So, what would you like to have happen?
I would like for them to I'd like them to want to go to school. I'd want them to want to learn as opposed to feel like they have to do it because, well, my teacher's going to be grading me on pass fail if I do it or not. I want them to be so interested in the content that they'd want to open it up and be there. They want to go to bed early so that they could get up and they were so excited to be there and do it.
This is where I hit the wall because I have a ton of empathy for you, but I have no good answers, and neither do you.
Yes. Well, I think I would. So I know we're rushing here because it's, we got 1 minute left. But I feel like first of all, you made me feel better. Just the fact that you're empathizing with me. And I feel like I did come up with a solution that, okay, one thing that I'm not going to keep doing is giving directives. That clearly is not working. I'm not feeling any better about it, and they're not feeling any better. And I had not thought of that. I had not thought of that until you brought it out to me, Jen. And of course, this is a 4-minute coaching session where normally we'd have 15 minutes or something like that. But you see, the difference is that, thanks, Tony. You see how the difference is that if we kept going a little bit longer, I think I would have come to even more solutions, if that makes sense. And thank you, Jen. I'm going to move on from
You're
here.
welcome.
Appreciate that. You did a great job. But this idea that if we had a little bit more time, we could teach the communication partner to bring out I didn't wait long enough. Now that I'm watching that video, and so you might ask a question like, what do you think would happen if you waited longer? What do you think would happen if you didn't, what happened if you modeled core vocabulary instead of fringe? You could ask those sorts of questions. Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe if I waited longer, he might jump in and he would use the communication device. I don't know. He might start using those core vocabulary words instead of fringe vocabulary words. Those are sorts of questions you could ask without saying, hey, you're modeling too much fringe. You need to start modeling core. That can often push people away. So I think I'm out of time. And of course, I knew I wouldn't have more slides and I get to it. It's every presentation I've ever done in my entire life. But feel free to look at them. And yeah, I'd be happy to come back, Tony and Julie and anyone else that wants, and do a part 2 of this, talk more about it.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I'm all for that. And as the guy who says yes or no, yes, sure, we'd love that. Part 2 would be wonderful.
Tony, that's how you get the slides. It's bit.ly coaching NJ.
Awesome. Chris,
Thanks,
that was great. It was the right taste about coaching. You know what I mean? Like a quick shot of it to start thinking of it. And Jen, yes. Well done. You did a good job. I thought that was awesome. And we'll talk to Chris and we'll have him come back for a part 2 of this. And we'll go a little bit deeper. If he's willing, we're willing. So that would be wonderful.
Anything for you, Mike, in New
That's
Jersey.
the deal, Chris. I appreciate it. Everyone, thanks so much for your time today. And we'll see you next time. Maybe we'll even talk Chris into doing a little longer of a session. Maybe we'll go a little longer. Nothing says we got to stay to a half hour. We can do a little longer. We'll see.
Absolutely. Happy to help, Mike. Let me know.
Awesome. Everybody,
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you so much. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chris.